Hello, welcome again. Thank you so much for being around. Thank you for liking and sharing the previous videos. And today again we continue in our studies on sulfur as a dietary mineral that is very essential. Now, we've talked about in passing before the historical perspective, the sources of sulfur and the absorption. Metabolism also was that which we looked at in the last session. Now today we'll be looking at the function. Now I previously thought I was going to handle both the function and the deficiency symptoms, but not to rush it up. We're just going to take the functions alone. Now let's go straight into it. Now today we have the functions of dietary sulfur. Now sulfur we're going to see that is very essential part of the essential amino acids cysteine and methionine, and it's also form part of glutathione, which is very important for keeping health of the cells. That is, it's an antioxidant. It's also very important component part of biotin and thiamine, which are very important vitamins. But let's go straight into it. Now we'll see that it is sulfur, very important function as a structural part of amino acids. It's also not just for the structure but also for the function. So we're looking at both the physiology and the function of the physiology and the anatomy of proteins. Now look at amino acids. You see cysteine we talked about before and methionine, and cysteine also. Now, it's also a contributing factor to the stabilizing and the folding of proteins. It's also an important part of enzyme activity. We've already said this, that enzymes and hormones, most hormones are protein-based, and also we have enzymes to be essentially proteins. Now, the second function of sulfur we're going to look at is detoxification. Now, sulfur is very important part of the sulfonation pathway. The sulfonation pathway where for liver detoxification. Liver is one part of the body or one organ of the body that is very crucial, plays a lot of roles. And in order to keep it well and healthy, there is need to detoxify it. It actually helps detoxify the body of toxins, keeping it healthy. So sulfur plays an essential role in that. Now we look at also the third, which is antioxidant part of it, which is part of its defense function. Now sulfur does something. It's a part of glutathione. Glutathione is a tripeptide. Now it protects the cells from oxidation. Oxidation, when the cell begins to get oxidized, it's not going to be far from being developing cancer, coming up in kind of shape or being exposed to coming up with certain behavior that is not part of the original function, in which case we begin to talk about cancer cells. But when you have cells being prevented from being oxidized, they maintain their structural integrity, and it's important sulfur ensures that. Now another thing is joints and connective tissues. Looking at the joints of the body, if you've studied the joints, the skeleton, you come across things like the cartilages. For example, now you see your ear, the cartilages, and then in between joints you see cartilages. It is the cartilages, as the body grows, as the bones grow, they eventually become or form bones. So sulfur is an essential part of cartilages, and also collagen, and also keratin. Keratin, we begin to talk about the protein that forms the nails and also the hair. Now, sulfur is part of that protein that forms the hair, for the skin, for the hair, and for the nails. You don't see that sulfur is very important. Anything important in protein is actually useful for the entire body of animals and for humans. Now, another important is vitamin activity, essential for the proper functioning of thiamine. I talked about it, which is vitamin B1, and biotin, which is vitamin B7. So sulfur plays an essential role in this. Then to wrap it up today, we'll be looking at metabolism. Metabolism we looked at in the past. In the last class, you've not watched it, please check the last video. You're going to see what we talked about metabolism, which has to do with the breaking down and the building up of nutrients. However, in this case of sulfur and some other minerals, there's actually not a breaking down, but there's actually an absorption and utilization of the mineral. So sulfur here plays an essential role. Though itself is not metabolized, but helps in the metabolization of carbohydrates. Now, when you metabolize carbohydrates, what happens? You produce energy. In other words, the metabolism of carbohydrates leads to energy production, and sulfur is at the heart of it. Now, these are some other things. Now, do you know some of the importance of sulfur that may not have been looked at? So please comment below and tell other functions of sulfur which you know or which you found out. If you have a question, please ask at the comment section. If you have a reason where you want to contribute, please do. It's a collective sharing opportunity. Thank you so much for staying tuned today. Let's see in the next class. The next class will be considering deficiency symptoms. Thank you so much. Bye.